The Lay of Saint Odille by Richard Harris. Barham. Odille was a maid of a dignified race. Her father, Count Otto, was lord of Alsace. Such an air, such a grace, such a form, such a face, all agreed 'twere a fruitless endeavour to trace in the court, or within 50 miles of the place. Many ladies in Strasburg were beautiful, still they were beat all to sticks by the lovely Odille. But Odille was devout, and, before she was 9, had experienced a call, she considered divine, to put on the veil at St. Ermengarde's shrine. Lords, dukes, and electors, and counts Palatine came to seek her in marriage from both sides the Rhine. But vain their design, they are all left to pine, their oglings and smiles are all useless. In fine, not one of these gentlefolks, try as they will, can draw, ask my papa, from the cruel Odille. At length one of her suitors, a certain Count Hermann, a highly respectable man as a German, who smoked like a chimney, and drank like a merman, paid his court to her father, conceiving his firman would soon make her bend, and induce her to lend an ear to a love tale in lieu of a sermon. He gained the old Count, who said, "Come, Mynheer, Phil, here's luck to yourself and my daughter Odille." The Lady Odille was quite nervous with fear when a little bird whispered that toast in her ear. She murmured, "Oh, dear. My papa has got queer, I am sadly afraid, with that nasty strong beer. He's so very austere, and severe, that it's clear if he gets in his tantrums, I can't remain here, but street. Ermengarde's convent is luckily near, it were folly to stay, pour prendre congé, I shall put on my bonnet, and e'en run away." She unlocked the back door, and descended the hill, on whose crest stood the towers of the sire of Odille. When he found she'd levanted, the Count of Alsace at first turned remarkably red in the face. He anathematized, with much unction and grace, every soul who came near, and consigned the whole race of runaway girls to a very warm place. With a frightful grimace he gave orders for chase. His vassals set off at a deuce of a pace, and of all whom they met, high or low, Jack or Jill, asked, "Pray, have you seen anything of Odille?" Now I think I've been told, for I'm no sporting man, that the knowing ones call this by far the best plan, take the lead and then keep it, that is if you can. Odille thought so too, so she set off and ran, put her best leg before, starting at score, as I said some lines since, from that little back door, and not being missed until half after 4, had what hunters call law, for a good hour and more, doing her best, without stopping to rest, like young Lochinvar who came out of the west. "'Tis done. I am gone, over briar, brook, and rill. They'll be sharp lads who catch me," said young Miss Odille. But you've all read in Aesop, or Phcedrus, or Gay, how a tortoise and hare ran together one day, how the hare, making play, progressed right slick away, as them tarnation chaps the Americans say, while the tortoise, whose figure is rather outre for racing, crawled straight on, without let or stay, having no post-horse duty or turnpikes to pay, till ere noon's ruddy ray changed to eve's sober grey. Though her form and obesity caused some delay, perseverance and patience brought up her lee way, and she chased her fleet-footed precursor, until she overtook her at last. So it fared with Odille. For, although, as I said, she ran gaily at first, and showed no inclination to pause, if she durst, she at length felt oppressed with the heat, and with thirst its usual attendant. Nor was that the worst, her shoes went down at heel. At last one of them burst. Now a gentleman smiles at a trot of 10 miles, but not so the fair. Then consider the styles, and as then ladies seldom wore things with a frill round the ankle, these styles sadly bothered Odille. Still, despite all the obstacles placed in her track, she kept steadily on, though the terrible crack in her shoe made of course her progression more slack, till she reached the Swartz forest, in English the Black. I cannot divine how the boundary line was passed which is somewhere there formed by the Rhine. Perhaps she'd the knack to float o'er on her back, or perhaps crossed the old bridge of boats at Bresek, which Vauban some years after secured from attack, by a bastion of stone which the Germans call whack. All I know is she took not so much as a snack, till hungry and worn, feeling wretchedly ill, on a mountain's brow sank down the weary Odille. I said on its brow, but I should have said crown, for 'twas quite on the summit, bleak, barren, and brown, and so high that 'twas frightful indeed to look down upon Freiburg, a place of some little renown, that lay at its foot. But imagine the frown that contracted her brow, when full many a clown she perceived coming up from that horrid post town. They had followed her trail, and now thought without fail, as little boys say, to lay salt on her tail, while the Count, who knew no other law but his will, swore that Hermann that evening should marry Odille. Alas, for Odille! Poor dear! What could she do? Her father's retainers now had her in view, as she found from their raising a joyous halloo, while the Count, riding on at the head of his crew, in their snuff-colored doublets and breeches of blue, was huzzaing and urging them on to pursue. What, indeed, could she do? She very well knew if they caught her how much she should have to go through, but then she'd so shocking a hole in her shoe. And to go further on was impossible. True, she might jump o'er the precipice, still there are few in her place who could manage their courage to screw up to bidding the world such a sudden adieu. Alack! How she envied the birds as they flew. No Nassau balloon with its wicker canoe came to bear her from him she loathed worse than a Jew. So she fell on her knees in a terrible stew, crying, Holy Street Ermengarde! Oh, from these vermin guard her whose last hope rests entirely on you. Don't let Papa catch me, dear saint! Rather kill at once, Sir Le Champ, your devoted Odille. It's delightful to see those who strive to oppress get balked when they think themselves sure of success. The saint came to the rescue. I fairly confess I don't see, as a saint, how she well could do less than to get such a votary out of her mess. Odille had scarce closed her pathetic address when the rock, gaping wide as the Thames at Sheerness, closed again, and secured her within its recess, in a natural grotto, which puzzled Count Otto, who could not conceive where the deuce she had got to. 'Twas her voice, but 'twas vox et persideria nil. Nor could any one guess what was gone with Odille. Then burst from the mountain a splendor that quite eclipsed in its brilliance the finest viewed light, and there stood Saint Ermengarde doctorist all in white, a palm branch in her left hand, her beads in her right, while with faces fresh gilt, and with wings burnished bright, a great many little boys' heads took their flight above and around to a very great height, and seemed pretty lively considering their plight, since every one saw, with amazement and awe, they could never sit down, for they hadn't a qua. All at the sight, from the nave to the knight, felt a very unpleasant sensation called fright, while the saint, looking down, with a terrible frown, said, My lords, you are done most remarkably brown. I am really ashamed of you both. My nerves thrill at your scandalous conduct to poor dear Odille. Come, make yourselves scarce. It is useless to stay, you will gain nothing here by a longer delay. Quick, presto, be gone, as the conjurers say, for as to the lady, I've stowed her away in this hill, in a stratum of London blue clay, and I shan't, I assure you, restore her today till you faithfully promise no more to say nay, but declare, if she will be a nun, why she may. For this you've my word, and I never yet broke it, so put that in your pipe, my Lord Otto, and smoke it. One hint to your vassals, a month at the mill, shall be nuts to what they'll get who worry Odille. The saint disappeared as she ended, and so did the little boys' heads, which, above and below, as I told you a very few stanzas ago, had been flying about her, and jumping Jem Crow. Though, without any body, or leg, foot, or toe, how they managed such antics, I really don't know. Be that as it may, they all melted like snow off a dike, as the Scotch say in sweet Edinburgh. And there stood the Count, with his men on the mount, just like 24 jackasses all on a row. What was best to be done? 'Twas a sad bitter pill, but gulp it he must, or else lose his Odille. The Lord of Alsace, therefore altered his plan, and said to himself, like a sensible man, I can't do as I would, I must do as I can. It will not do to lie under any saint's ban, for your hide, when you do, they all manage to tan. So Count Hermann must pick up some Betsy or Nan, instead of my girl, some Sue, Polly, or Fan. If he can't get the corn he must do with the bran, and make shift with the pot if he can't have the pan. After words such as these he went down on his knees, and said, Blessed Street Ermengarde, just as you please they shall build a new convent, I'll pay the whole bill, taking discount, its abbess shall be my Odille. There are some of my readers, I'll venture to say, who have never seen Freiburg, though some of them may, and others 'tis likely may go there some day. Now if ever you happen to travel that way, I do beg and pray, 'twill your pains well repay, that you'll take what the Cockney folks call a poche, though in Germany these things are more like a dray. You may reach this same hill with a single relay, and do look how the rock, through the whole of its block, is split open as though by some violent shock from an earthquake, or lightning, or horrid hard knock from the club-bearing fist of some jolly old cock of a Germanized giant, Thor, Woden, or Loke. And see how it rears its two monstrous great ears, for when once you're between them such each side appears, and list to the sound of the water one hears drip, drip from the fissures, like raindrops or tears. Odilles, I believe, which have flowed all these years, I think they account for them so, but the rill I'm sure is connected some way with Odille. Moral. Now then for a moral, which always arrives at the end, like the honeybees take to their hives, and the more one observes it the better one thrives. We have all heard it said in the course of our lives, needs must when a certain old gentleman drives. 'Tis the same with a lady, if once she contrives to get hold of the ribbons, how vainly one strives to escape from her lash, or to shake off her gyves. Then let's act like Count Otto, and while one survives succumb to our she-saints' videlicet wives. Aside, that is if one has not a good bunch of fives. I can't think how that last line escaped from my quill, for I am sure it has nothing to do with Odille. Now young ladies to you, don't put on the shrew, and don't be surprised if your father looks blue when you're pert, and won't act as he wants you to do. Be sure that you never elope. There are few, believe me you'll find what I say to be true, who run restive, but find as they bake they must brew, and come off at the last with a hole in their shoe, since not even Clapham, that sanctified vill, can produce enough saints to save every Odille.